On the second day of aircraft, I still don't know why I did this, but this is an F-16 that is more realistic than my previous attempts, including functional air brakes. Unfortunately, only barely functional air brakes, as these alligator hinges, while they do change their amount of drag as they hinge, they do not create sufficiently high drag. There's no other stock part that I can place on them that will keep the aesthetic that I want and increase their effectiveness, unfortunately, so we are stuck with this. I tried to make the performance a little bit more realistic with the thrust-to-weight ratio of the engine as well, although now that I'm looking at it, the thrust-to-weight ratio is quite a bit lower than I thought it was, although actually it occurs to me that's probably because of the drop tanks. Let's just go ahead and take those off for a moment, and you can see, it doesn't jump up that much higher, actually. When it's in afterburning mode, it drops up to, it drops up to 0.97. Oh, so I've actually made this lower thrust than it's supposed to be. Huh. I thought I had this at a relatively realistic value, but apparently not. In any case, it does handle like a real F-16, which means super maneuverable, to the point of being more maneuverable than you can handle. Actually, it's not bad at all. It's pretty easy to handle. I've just noticed that I did not put a clip on the end of that part. When you have exposed nodes, even if they're on the rear of a part, that does actually increase drag just a little bit, which is why I've started in more recent designs adding an extra nose cone even when parts are clipped in a weird way like that. Like for instance, this is here. This aerodynamic nose cone is on this part to decrease drag, although it's also there for aesthetic reasons, because the only way I could get this intake to look somewhat correctly, the somewhat correct, is to have that so. Anyhow, right now, I'm going to go ahead and launch a version without all of these on board, because who needs them? And apparently this version is not a US version of the F-16 because it has a drogue chute on it, which the US F-16s do not, but there is a country that does have drogue chutes on their F-16s. I don't remember which country off the top of my head, but that's neither here nor there. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and show that the brakes do indeed deploy as you'd expect, and they retract as you'd expect, and I'd say you could see their effect right now, but we also are on the ground, so the wheel brakes are having an effect as well, which also possibly your wheel brakes should be a higher value. I'm not really sure. In any case, it can take off pretty easily. It does come very close to tail striking and striking the winglets though, so you do need to be careful in taking off with this, just like a real F-16. I've also, if I remember correctly, tuned it just a little bit so that it'd be easier to... Never mind, I did not tune it. I thought I had tuned it to make it harder to do stupid things like that, but instead I decided to allow this F-16 to maintain its really stupid capabilities in terms of being able to just like instantly roll, pitch, and do something horrifyingly out of control like that. In fact, I'm going to need to, use a little bit of afterburner there to kick us out of what otherwise would have been a very bad time. But I decided to keep it that and just tell you, you know, fly it carefully as you would in a real F-16. You would fly it carefully because it is quite powerful and very easy to lose control of due to its hyper maneuverability and inherent instability. As you can see, we can turn around mid-flight quite dramatically. I'm surprised that it handled that as well as it did, to be honest. It makes me wonder if I accidentally left the reaction wheels on. I did not accidentally leave them on, but it really felt like it for a moment. But in any case, this F-16 is pretty fun to fly. I do enjoy it very much, and the aesthetic of it. I tried to get the fuselage correct by using a, what do you call it? It's not engine nacelle on the back here, to give it that little extra bump that the fuselage has towards the back. Tried to use the proper radial air intake for the engines, proper winglets, proper landing gear placement. I mean, more or less. The landing gear in KSP aren't exactly great, especially when trying to do replicas. Actually, they're not good for anything you're going to do, but in this case, it does work out alright, and we're going to crash now. And that's why you should fly it more carefully. Of course, the version of this that I'm providing on Kerbal X does have the standard nacelle, the hardpoint attachments here, as well as these drop tanks that do extend its range quite a bit. unlike the version I was flying just now, but I figured for the sake of demonstrating its higher performance without those attachments, I would do so. Now, for the special part. I also made an F-16 XL, which, if I remember correctly, was created as a prototype, and so these have existed and flown, but very few of them. It, I think, has higher thrust. I'm not sure if it actually has higher thrust. I added a second engine because it definitely needed it in order to get appropriate performance. I also tried very hard to copy the wing shape correctly, because the F-16 XL is just this large modified delta wing, which is very interesting, especially taking an F-16 body and just completely, I'm going to call it Europeaning it. There's got to be a better way to say what I meant there, but basically, you know, it was an American plane, an American design, and then they just went like, yo, let's delta it, because delta wings are great, and I associate delta wings with European aircraft just because of like the Mirage, the Raphael, the Eurofighter Typhoon. There's a lot of delta wing aircraft that are made by European partners. You can see we do use a couple of basic fins in order to get the center of lift into the correct place, and unlike the regular F-16, this is a little easier to control. I just remembered that this version actually doesn't have the full set of hardpoints that the real thing should have. It only has the one, and it has a drogue chute. I don't know if the prototype ever had a drogue chute. This thing never made it past prototype stage, but here we are. And like I said, this has an extra engine on it to provide necessary power. I might go back to my F-16 replica and add the Weasley inside of the Panther in order to increase its power. This is something that I've done on many craft because I feel that it aesthetically works and performance-wise works quite well, and allows you to get away with things that you otherwise would not be able to. As you can see, this thing does not have the extreme turning performance, but I feel that this is more realistic for an engagement anyhow. If you are using BD Armory, it pays to keep your speed up. You don't want to lose all your speed in a turn. And so this is a little bit better, even though it doesn't turn quite as sharply. And I don't know, it's a research craft, so it just feels more appropriate to me to fly like this than to fly hyper insanity mode. Also, the amount of deflection that would be needed to give it hyper insanity mode would probably make this not great. So it's good like this, and again, I'm sorry for the flickering. After this recording, I am stopping my recordings for today, and I'm gonna find out why the heck that's happening. In any case, let's avoid crashing into the ground right this moment, just because, you know, I don't feel like dying. Go ahead and engage the afterburners, give us a little more performance here as I come near the dish and do a low pass. Do a very slow barrel roll, in fact too slow. We're gonna, oh, very nearly crash there, but not quite, thankfully. And I'm going to do a maneuver like this while deploying the landing gear at excessive speed, deploying the full air brakes, and we're going to come around for a landing. This may not go as intended because we are losing a lot of speed. I don't remember what the minimum speed of flight for this particular aircraft is, so we might be coming down at too slow of a speed because I am at maximum deflection and barely able to keep the nose up. So, oh dear. Okay, little hard to safely land there, especially on bumpy terrain, but we did manage to keep from wing striking, which is very good, especially considering the landing gear placement on this particular craft is not exactly ideal. I do think the brakes should probably be increased in force in order to have a shorter stop. In any case, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the air, on the ground, underwater, in space, somewhere. I don't know.